Welcome to First Do No Harm with Massachusetts Citizens for Life board member and physician Dr. Mark Rollo. This broadcast will focus on medical ethics from a Catholic perspective and address abortion, physician-assisted suicide, contraception, natural family planning, IVF, healthcare proxy, and other topics. Please be advised that this show may not be appropriate for children under 13.
Hello and welcome back to First Do No Harm, a show about medical ethics from a Catholic perspective. I'm Dr. Mark Rollo. Last time I featured part 2 of my interview with Mary Ellen Siegler, Massachusetts mom, educator, and organizational leader who spoke about the dangers of so-called comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, in the public schools, which threatens our families and our society. In this context, I quoted Pope Francis, who has said, "Beware of the new ideological colonization that tries to destroy the family. As families, we have to be very wise and strong to say no to any attempted ideological colonization that would destroy the family, and to ask the intercession of St. Joseph to know when to say yes and when to say no. In our time, it is time to say no. It is time to say no to the ideological colonization that pollutes our children with the empty messages of hypersexualization and gender ideology that exists to an increasing extent in our public schools." Mary Ellen Siegler went through this in great detail last time, especially as it relates to the Worcester Public Schools recently inviting the Trojan horse of CSE into the public schools. CSE is a kind of ideological colonization, and as freedom-loving Americans, we know that colonization is a form of oppression from which we need to free ourselves. Last time I also shared excerpts from a recent speech delivered on May 20th, 2021 by William Barr, former Attorney General of the United States and longtime defender of freedom. In this speech, he argued that the greatest threat to religious liberty in America today is the increasingly militant and extreme secular progressive climate of our state-run educational system. I will share more excerpts from this important speech by Attorney General Barr, after which I will play the final segment of my conversation with Mary Ellen Siegler. Let us first, as always, begin with prayer. For as stated by the U.S. Catholic bishops, only with prayer, prayer that storms the heavens for justice and mercy, prayer that cleanses our hearts and souls, will the culture of death that surrounds us today be replaced with a culture of life. O God, through the intercession of St. Joseph, we pray that you would continue to protect the family from outside forces that would undermine the authority and freedom of the family. We ask you to enlighten the hearts of educators everywhere, that by supporting the family, they truly educate and love the child entrusted in their care. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, before I play part 3 of my conversation with Mary Ellen Siegler, I would like to continue to share excerpts from the recent speech by William Barr, former Attorney General of the United States. The notion, he explained, that we can hermetically seal off religion from education is a relatively novel idea, and it is an idea that the experience of the past half-century has refuted in rather spectacular fashion. For a time, a culturally homogeneous American society was able to finesse it, but today The situation as it stands is clearly untenable. A.G. Barr continued, "The American approach to public schooling and its relationship to religion has proceeded in three distinct historical phases. The early advocates for public education, particularly Horace Mann and the Common School movement, saw public schools as performing at least two missions. One, inculcating a sense of common identity and common civic and cultural bonds, forging the unum out of the pluribus. Number two, the moral formation of America's youth, the building of moral character. In this first phase, the advocates of public schools agreed that religion was integral to such an education. You could not separate moral education from religion. So the early advocates of public schools explicitly incorporated religion into the schools. It was an anodyne form of Christianity that was composed of all the key articles of faith that Protestant denominations generally agreed upon. This was a generally acceptable pan-Protestantism, and the idea was that schools should teach religion that was common to all, or at least all Christians. It was the presence of this form of pan-Protestantism in the schools that led to the creation of a separate school system for Catholics and for religious Jews. The key point is that until the 1970s or so, the instruction received in the public school system openly embraced Judeo-Christian beliefs and values, and most certainly was not hostile to, nor fundamentally in conflict with, traditional religious beliefs. In short, religion and the public school system were compatible because the school system embraced a generally acceptable form of Christianity. The second phase of public schooling came in the latter part of the 20th century. This was when the left embarked on a relentless campaign of secularization intent on driving every vestige of traditional religion from the public square. Public schools quickly became the central battleground. He stated that even as schools were forcibly secularized, the notion of moral instruction did not simply go away. The rich Judeo-Christian tradition was replaced with trite talk of liberal values. Be a good person, be caring. And now in Phase 3, Attorney General William Barr goes on to say, in many places in the country, our public schools are becoming an absurdity that can scarcely be believed. Consider just one example. Earlier this year, an Iowa public school district taught transgenderism and homosexuality to students at all grade levels, including preschool. As part of a Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, the school district distributed a children's coloring book that teaches everyone gets to choose if they are a girl or a boy, or both, or neither, or someone else, and no one else gets to choose for them. I commend to you the full reading of this important speech, which can be easily found by going to your search engine and typing in William Barr Speech 2021. And now, here is part 3 of my interview with Mary Ellen Siegler. We continue to discuss the poison of comprehensive sexuality education in the public schools. One horrible undermining of the family has occurred recently, or it's been made worse recently. It was already bad, but the so-called Roe Act, which tried to liberalize abortion even more than it already is in the state, and that was rammed through at the end of last year. Seeking an abortion used to require parental consent, but not anymore. And
right.
Then they tried to say, okay, well, we'll have a judicial bypass. So if the 16 or 17 or 18-year-old is afraid to talk to their parents about being pregnant, they can go see a judge. Well, even at that, more than 90% of the judges said, yeah, okay, you could have an abortion. But
Yes.
this recent thing even eliminated that.
Yes.
So a sex predator or a sex trafficker could conceivably take a pregnant 16-year-old to Planned Parenthood to get an abortion, and the parents wouldn't even know.
It's true. That's exactly what has happened and what will happen with this legislation. So really to think that a child can make such a huge life decision without the guidance and knowledge,
Yeah.
their parents' consent or their parents' knowledge of it. It's really unfathomable to think that our legislators think that that was okay.
Yeah. So that kind of gets to, all right, so now that we have hopefully exposed some of this, and I would say we could even highlight the negative aspects even more if we use some of the explicit things that these kids are taught, but I'm afraid to do that on the radio. If we're going to try to combat this so-called comprehensive sex education, you've talked about using the SRA approach, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, and let me just say, if parents want to learn more about what is actually contained within comprehensive sexuality education, because sometimes it's really difficult to wrap your head around it if you're not actually seeing what it is that we're so alarmed about.
Yeah.
But so I invite people to go to Massachusetts Informed Parents and to scroll through some of my posts there.
Yeah.
And to also look in the file section. I have harm analyses documents that they're from the Protect Child Health Coalition, which is a national coalition that I'm a part of. And they've produced a lot of documents, evaluation documents of the curriculum.
Yeah, it's downright pornographic.
So they can go there, they can look and see exactly what's in the curriculum and why we're so concerned about it. But yes, so sexual risk avoidance education is an approach to sex education it's a primary prevention model. So much like we would teach a young person not to smoke, many of the no smoking campaigns that you have seen, they are a primary prevention model. Don't drink and drive, that is a primary prevention model approach, right? So you're defining the activity as a high-risk activity, and you're encouraging people not to do it. So, and I made this point during the school committee meeting when I was testifying that we don't teach our young people to drink and drive safely.
Right.
We tell them not to do it. We don't try to teach our children, well, here's how you can smoke safely. We tell them, do not smoke. It's not healthy for you.
Right.
So, but then when it comes to teen activity, sexual activity, which we know is a high-risk activity and not healthy for them, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well.
Right.
We should be telling them not to do that before marriage. So personally, I believe that sex education should be handled in the home.
I agree with
do
you.
not believe that the school should be handling it at all.
Right.
But we do know that there are some students who might not have that support at home. And we do know that, in the current climate, that there seems to be a real push for inserting health and sex education in the schools. So if we are going to go that route, and it's really up to individual communities to decide what they want for their communities and in their school, I recommend a sexual risk avoidance approach because it is the healthiest approach. So now, proponents of CSE will say, oh, SRA does not work.
Right.
And, but those are really just talking points. So, and they'll say, well, they don't, it's not comprehensive enough because it doesn't discuss STIs or it doesn't discuss contraception, but that's actually not true. It actually includes information on all of those things, but it goes into much more detail even on the STIs and even on abortion and the real risks involved. Whereas CSE really kind of glosses over a lot of that. So, it talks about it and mentions it, but it doesn't elaborate. So an SRA model elaborates so that they're really giving kids good information. They're giving the students robust information about really the risk that is involved with teen sexual activity. I mean, those students who participate in sexual activity they're less likely to use contraception, more likely to experience an STI. They more likely to end up with concurrent or sexual partners, so multiple sexual partners. They're more likely to experience pregnancy. They're more likely to achieve a lower educational attainment. There's more of an increase in sexual abuse and victimization. There's decreased general physical and psychological health, including depression, decreased relationship quality, stability. They're more likely to divorce, and they're more frequent. There's usually connected to more frequent engagement in other high-risk activities, such as smoking, drinking, and drugs. So these are things that SRA addresses, all of these things. So SRA really is the more comprehensive model of sex education.
Right, and it's kind of ironic that a lot of people treat abstinence like it was a dirty word, like this was some kind of impossibility. But really, that's sort of the bigotry of low expectations, I think, is the term that's used. And there is a lot of evidence out there that using SRA is more effective than comprehensive sex education. So it's, as you say, it's really most appropriate that this be taught in the home. But if there is a choice to make, the SRA approach is a better way to go. To what extent has this permeated the Boston or the Massachusetts schools? I know this curriculum is in Boston, and they're trying to get it in Worcester, and they're on the verge of doing that. Do you know to what extent it's in other, the comprehensive sex education is involved in other public schools across the state?
Well, it's actually quite pervasive. So I'm working on a massive project right now, gathering information from every single school district in the state. And as that information comes in, I am evaluating the curriculum and writing an evaluation of it and compiling a report of what's happening in Massachusetts. I hope to finish that project by next year sometime. So I will tell you this, that I have yet to come across a school district that does not use some form of comprehensive sexuality education. So I keep waiting as information comes in from a new district, and I take a look at it, and I think, wow, I can't tell you how concerning it is, some of the resources that are coming back to me. So not only these all-in-one inclusive curriculum like Planned Parenthood's Get Real or the 3 R's from Advocates for Youth, but a lot of school districts are using online resources and online websites. And the thing that's really alarming about that is that most of these websites not only do they contain a lot of objectionable material, they are linked to additional websites.
Yeah.
And when you click through to some of the additional websites, I've come across content that I've had to quickly exit out of. Because it's not healthy for me to even to look at it. So I've come across pornographic material. It's just very, very alarming. One parent sent me information from their school district and asked me to evaluate it in Westford, and I did. In one of the videos that the school was using it was a short little 2-minute video to describe the process of conception. And at the end of the video, it referred the students to go to a website called stayteen.org to get more information. So I went to that website to visit the website, and the website automatically redirects to a website called Power to Decide. And that whole website was a complete infomercial pushing abortion. And it had an abortion finder. It had so many different articles and blog posts that were really highly inappropriate, talking
Mm-hmm.
about multiple
Mm-hmm.
sexual partners and just really inappropriate material. But even more alarming was that that website had a link to another website called Bedsider, and that just had adult information on it.
Mm.
So these are the things that I am finding
Yeah.
in Massachusetts schools. Now, fortunately, we brought this to the attention of the school officials. They made the decision to remove that reference from that video, which was a win.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why it's very important for parents to be paying attention.
Yeah.
But realistically, Mark, is a parent going to evaluate every single
Right.
resource? If
Right.
a school is using 15 different resources to teach comprehensive sexuality education
Yeah.
or sex ed, are they going to be able to find all of these things? This is how this is getting past parents.
Yeah. It gets
Now,
to be
I
a
just
shell
happen,
game.
right. I mean, I researched this subject, so I know where to look.
Mm-hmm.
And as an educator, I understand curriculum and how curriculum is arranged.
Mm-hmm.
So, but maybe a parent who might not have that background may not be, they may miss certain things
Right.
because they just may not know where to look.
Yeah.
And so this is why this information is getting through to the kids without the parents knowing. And the schools, this is just kind of flying under the radar.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you, Mary Ellen, for being out there and for shining a light on this, because I think that a lot of parents out there, they're just, some of them are uncomfortable about having the conversation with their teens and preteens, and a lot of them probably think that sex ed is still sort of like what they had. Maybe, like for me, it was a 1 or 2 hour biology lesson, and then the importance of saving sex until marriage. But it's way beyond that now, and I really
Yes.
thank you for being out there, and hopefully this will open some eyes out there and get people to ask questions. And you've been able to do a lot of that in your capacity. Before we end this conversation, are there any last words that you have?
Well, I just want to encourage parents. My mom says to me, I don't envy you raising children today. She said, you
Mm-hmm.
have so many more things that you have to pay attention to than we did even when we were raising you. So my heart does go out to parents. Many parents are busy working to provide for their families, to take care of their families. They love their children. They want to protect their children. So it's overwhelming, all of the things that they kind of have to through as parents today. So that I want to be a resource for parents. I would encourage parents that if they are able to remove their children from a public school,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many innovations happening now in education. So there are online schools, homeschooling has really grown.
Mm-hmm.
Your children can have a really wonderful experience homeschooling. There are lots of groups and support groups and cooperative type things. More pastors are starting to open up small church schools.
Mm-hmm.
There are private schools. So I encourage parents, first and foremost, if they can remove their child from public education, I would encourage them to do so.
Yep.
There are
Yep.
issues in public education now, CSE being one of them, and the sexualization of children being one of them. So I would encourage them, if they can, to remove their child. Now, I know that that's not realistic for every family.
Mm-hmm.
So for a family who is not able to, I really want you to become part of Massachusetts Informed Parents so you
Mm-hmm.
can stay connected. Get on the mailing list for Massachusetts Family Institute so you can be connected to groups who are watching and paying attention to what's happening so that we can get important information to you and so that we can help equip you to protect your children. So I also encourage parents to opt your child out of any sex education
Mm-hmm.
class
Right.
in school. So on our group, you can find an opt-out form both on the Massachusetts Family Institute website, but you can find it in the file section of Massachusetts Informed Parents as well. And if you have any questions, of course, you can contact me at massinformedparents@gmail.com. I'm always happy to take phone calls and answer emails of parents to provide them encouragement and support and information. But opt your child out. And we are, something that we have to keep on the radar is that there is currently a piece of legislation called the Sex Ed Mandate. It's actually called the Healthy Youth Act, which is just a euphemism for a sex ed mandate. So currently, the way the current law is in Massachusetts, school districts do not have to teach sex ed, and if they choose to do so, they can choose whichever curriculum they would like. Now, if the Healthy Youth Act or the sex ed mandate passes, then for school districts who do choose to teach sex ed, they will be forced to teach a comprehensive sexuality education model, so the curriculum. So we do not want this piece of legislation to pass. So I encourage you to visit the Mass MA.gov website to learn more about that. I will be publishing information also on that in Massachusetts Informed Parents, likely later today and tomorrow. So, I encourage people to reach out to their elected officials and to tell them to vote no on the sex ed mandate.
Mary Ellen Siegler, thanks so much for this wonderful hour we spent together talking about these very important issues. Thank you so much.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for having me and for caring about our young people. I just appreciate everything that you're doing as well.
Well, thank you.
Okay, God bless.
Yeah, thank you. This concludes my conversation with Mary Ellen Siegler. You can contact Mary Ellen at massinformedparents@gmail.com. Learn more about this and other issues affecting the family at Massachusetts Family Institute, which is mafamily.org. I conclude with one final excerpt from Attorney General Barr's recent important speech. What is taking shape is a full-blown, may I say systemic, subversion of the religious world view, telling school children that they get to choose their gender, not just male or female, but anything else, and that no one has anything to say about it, does not just contradict particular religious teachings on gender and the authority of parents. It is a broadside attack on the very idea of natural law. Until next time, remember, we should always treat life with care and respect. And, at the very least, we should first do no harm.
Thank you for tuning in to First Do No Harm. Dr. Rollo welcomes your questions and comments. You may contact him at markrollo978@gmail.com. That's MARKROLLO978@gmail.com. Thank you, and until next week, remember, first do no harm.